What can be played in 50 different ways? What is one of the smallest string instruments have you ever seen? What can play vibrato, pizzicato, spiccato, or harmonic? Well, that would be one of my favorite string instruments, known as the violin. The violin, as you can see, is a wooden instrument with 4 strings. It requires the use of the bow to play with. I've been studying the art of violin playing for 2 years under the tutelage of a violin teacher. Today, I will present to you, the audience, the brief history, the tools, and techniques that make the violin one of the most illustrious string instruments in history. First off, the violin has a fascinating history. Violin playing is a physical art with great traditions behind it. Its humble origins can be dated far as back as the medieval era. However, before the violin was shaped like this, as we know it today, it was known more as a rebec. It had 3 strings, and the body would be varied from a rectangular shape or a triangular shape. The violins that we know today that created a universal shape originated from Italy in the early 1500s. This was the universal shape that the Italian violin makers made for all violins today and then. As years passed, adjustments were made to the violin that were equipped with more tools to preserve the violin's sound and body. Second, I'll introduce the adjustments and tools that are used to aid in violin playing. The first tool is one of the most important tools. To create the sound or music, you require the strings and the bow. With these two, when you strike the bow to the strings, you create the sound or music. Well, there are 3 fundamental factors you must keep in mind when striking the bow to the strings. First off is the speed. How fast or slow you strike to the bow to the strings will determine how lasting the sound will be. How much pressure you put will determine how deep or low the pitch will be. Finally, the contact where you make with the bow to the strings, whether it be the bottom, the middle, or tip of the bow, will decide the other 2 factors. Second tool is the rosin. The rosin here, as you can see, is a stone. And what it is used for is that when you scratch it, it creates a residue that is used for the bow to keep the shimmer and liveliness of the bow, because the bow is one of the most essential instruments for the violin to create music or sound. Finally, the last tool is the shoulder rest. The shoulder rest here, as you can see, is used to attach at the bottom of the violin. Without the shoulder rest, you would have to play the violin of the back body, of the wooden back body. And let me tell you, without the shoulder rest, I would have aching shoulder problems, and my shoulder would just lump and fall off. Finally, the third main point are the numerous techniques of the violin that require the use of both hands. The most common technique for the violin is the use of open strings. Open strings is playing the violin with the bow without using finger stopping. Finger stopping is the use of your hands pushing down one of the strings to create a totally different sound. But without it, and you just play it like this, it's just open strings. Bringing liveliness and shimmer to the sound, vibrato, is another technique that involves the left hand and arm, in which the pitch note varies in a pulsating rhythm. From here, to create a vibrato, you have to use either your palm, the wrist, or through the knuckles to the fingertips, and make your hand in a pulsating rhythm, like vibrate it, to create the sound in a vibration. Finally, the last technique I'll show you is lightly touching the string with a fingertip at a harmonic node, which can be located right here, harmonic node. And a harmonic is a high-pitched sound, a high-pitched note sound. Now that you understand most of the history, tools, and techniques that make the violin unique, you may want to join me and learn how to play this instrument, or learn to appreciate more about this instrument. As my final point, violins are not only wooden instruments or acoustic, but they're also made into electric instruments as well, require the use of an amp.